Hey, what's up YouTube? This is CJ. I know it's been a little while since my last Reef update, but just been a little too busy here lately. You know, the weather's breaking, I'm coaching youth football and spending a lot more time outside with the kids and less time for videos. But still haven't forgot about you guys, and more importantly, haven't forgot about my tank. So I'm gonna catch you guys up. But before we do, if you guys are new to my channel or if you missed my last video recapping the first full year of this tank, highly recommend you guys go check it out. I'll show you how I go from the beginning, just dry rock, and bring you all the way to the day as far as everything I went through and just a quick recap. So it's a good watch. If you guys haven't checked it out, recommend you go do so. So with that being said, I really have to mention this for anyone new in the hobby watching my videos. I may give you the impression this is easy. You know, it just comes together naturally. But really, this hobby is just like walking through a minefield forever. A never-ending minefield is basically what it is. You know, one mistake, you know, the wrong fish, the wrong coral, or just the wrong placement, anything wrong you do in saltwater will cost you lots of money, lots of frustration. And basically, I've just been lucky. I would just call it luck. Now, with that being said, year 2, the luck finally ran out. So as far as this update goes, we're going to cover that major mistake I made a few weeks ago and just the repercussions and just all the chaos it's caused in my tank. We're also going to go over the Algae Scrubber and definitely some growth. And the Gyre 130, I'm going to give you guys my first thoughts on it. So, you know, overall, just a full tank update. It's going to be a little longer than usual. But like I said, with these videos being a little less frequent, got to jam pack it all with everything that's happened over the last few weeks. So hope you guys enjoy it. Let me quit rambling. Let's go ahead and get with the update. So let's take you back to a few weeks ago. You know, I first introduced this midnight angelfish to you guys. And by all accounts, everything was all good. You know, no aggression with my flame angel. No issues that I could recognize, at least not the first week or so. But shortly after that, that's when all the mayhem started. Now keep in mind, you know, in this hobby it's well known that dwarf angelfish are really risky when it comes to adding them to your reef tank. And I understand the risk. You know, I tried to select species that had a good reputation, you know, quote unquote. And by doing that, I've been pretty lucky. You know, the 2 flame angels I've had in here never went after my corals. The multi-bar angels, I've had 2 of those. They never touched my corals. It wasn't until this guy got in the tank that I had my first experience and my first lesson in the hobby with angelfish eating your corals. Definitely a frustrating experience. You know, it started with this guy pecking around at different things, almost like he was testing them or tasting them. And then finally, he got the taste that he wanted, and he started with my Duncan coral. So when I noticed this behavior, you know, I was really like, damn, man, he's eating my Duncan coral. You know, I don't have to tear down my whole tank to catch this damn fish. What am I gonna do? You know, I went on for a few days, and I finally got a couple of nets, and I actually caught them fairly easy. You know, compared to the damsel, it was a lot easier. Didn't have to tear down anything. That's the good news. The bad news is exactly what he did to my corals. So after doing some damage to a few heads of my Duncan coral, he decided to move on to my zoanthids. That's when it really got nasty. I literally noticed some zoanthid heads completely missing all the way down to the core, like he literally just kind of ate each polyp one by one. And then the worst part happened. He moved on to my euphyllias. He literally would go around the base of my euphyllias, eating the tissue that connects to the skeleton. And I didn't realize what it was doing at first until I noticed the after effect of, you know, damage to euphyllia corals. Now this part of the story gets a lot worse. I'm going to introduce you guys to brown jelly disease, also known as the death of a reef tank, especially a euphyllia tank, and one of my worst nightmares. Now, unfortunately, you know, this isn't my first run-in with brown jelly. I had an issue a couple years back with my first reef tank. You know, I didn't know any better at the time, but I quickly found out how dangerous this stuff is. You know, it wiped out close to 80% of my euphyllias in my first reef tank, and I slowly watched them melt one head at a time over a process of a few weeks. Highly frustrating. So what is brown jelly? You know, what does it look like? How do you get it? You know, where does it come from? Honestly, I recommend you guys do your research on this. But in a nutshell, for those wondering, it's just a bacterial infection in your corals. And it comes from, you know, a few different ways, but for the most part, it's due to either bad water quality or physical damage to your coral. Now, in my situation, I have no doubt in my mind that that midnight angel pecking and picking and doing everything he could to try to eat my torch coral kind of opened a wound and allowed this to set in, along with, you know, some potential bad water parameters at the time. You know, I did have some nitrates creep up. As I mentioned in my last vid, I kind of cut back on my water changes. That ended up changing later down the line, so I'll kind of cover that later in the vid. But in a nutshell, I got brown jelly in my tank, but this time I got a plan to try to stop it, at least try to stop it from spreading, and I'm gonna give you guys a quick look at what I did. Now, one of the most important things to remember with this is you don't want it spreading through your display. So if you see this brown jelly in your corals, resist the urge to take a turkey baster or, something to blow it off, because if you get this stuff in your water column, get it in your power heads to spread out through your tank, you're effectively just spreading disease everywhere. So, any stressed coral, any coral that has physical damage, you're just gonna, expose them to the disease more. So highly recommend, if you're gonna try to treat this, do as I'm doing, remove it from your tank and put it in a bucket. Now, as far as the treatments, I've seen all kinds of different ways, people using iodine, antibiotics, everything you can think of to try to dip your corals. Unfortunately, all I have is my Revive, and that's what I used with this case. So I just gave them a quick dip over the course of 2 days. Anytime I noticed brown jelly showing on the heads, I removed them from the tank, put them in the dip, took a turkey baster, blew away all the dead tissue. As you can tell, it's all floating in there, and basically just tried to, do damage control. As I mentioned before, once it infects your coral, there's no real way to get rid of it. So you just pretty much chalk up the head that it infected and, and try to keep it from spreading. Now, if you have some kind of wall variety of Euphyllia, once you get that infected, you're pretty much done for. But if you got a branch variety, you may be able to save a few heads. So the best thing I would recommend, if you get this showing on any of your Euphyllia corals, just try to keep that damaged tissue out of your tank. I did this over the course of 2 days, and that's pretty much all the time it took for the heads that were affected to completely, dissolve the tissue and everything else that was left in that head to be completely gone, exposed, and skeleton. Now, in my situation, if I can limit it to losing one head on my torch and one head on my lemon lime torch, I'll call it a win, because I've seen this, wipe out everything before. So that's the plan, and this is pretty much how I treated it. 2 days worth of dipping. After I got finished dipping, put in a bucket of some clean tank water, finished turkey basting it, blowing out any dead tissue, and repeating the process until I didn't see anymore. So that's pretty much my plan. Is it gonna work? We're gonna find out. But I definitely didn't want to just sit back and just see what was gonna happen in my tank without any kind of action. So I'll keep you guys updated on this situation. So let's go ahead and keep this update moving. Let me give you guys a quick look at my sump. Running the same equipment, same filtration. I haven't changed anything for the life of this tank. But since we're back here, for those curious, let me give you an update on the Algae Scrubber. For those that don't know what this is, check out the review vid. I'll put a link down below for you. It's the Santa Monica Drop Algae Scrubber. It's pretty much a upflow scrubber. It uses air to draw water in and an LED light to grow algae. Now, as far as the benefits of it, that's what I'm testing it for, so we can get the real deal as far as, if it's benefiting my tank or not. But let's take a look at the growth. I'll tell you what, this thing is looking pretty nasty. If you compare this to the last update I shared with you guys, it was a lot more white. And as you can tell, it is really starting to fill in with some thick green nastiness. Now, as far as smell, it really doesn't have much of a smell. That's a good thing. And I'm willing to bet that since this box was open for I don't know how long, when I pulled it up, I didn't realize it was open. I'm willing to bet I got all kinds of algae growth in my sump. So we're going to take a look down there and see what happened. But as far as overall growth, I would say it's still progressing. It's my first algae scrubber, so I don't know what it's supposed to, eventually turn into. I don't know if it's going to turn into like a big, ball of hair algae in here, or, thick stuff, or if this is the most it's going to get. So I will mention I have not cleaned this the entire time. It's been on my tank running for a little over a month and a half, almost 2 months. When it comes close to the 30th of the month, it'll be 2 months running. So I think I'll go ahead and give it a clean, and we'll see what grows back. I'll share the cleaning with you guys in a later video. Well, I think we figured out why I haven't had much algae growing inside the box. As you can tell, it's growing all over my sump. Either that red light's bleeding through, or this is just some kind of weird side effect of, the bubbles from that algae scrubber, or maybe extra CO2 being brought into my tank growing algae. I don't know what it is, but it's growing algae all over my tank. So I'm going to clean that up and then make sure this box stays closed for the next month. And then we'll see if it has the same effect. But, algae growth is algae growth. It's always a good thing. And especially with it being in the back of my tank, hey, I'll call it a win. So I'm going to get in there and clean that out. But as far as the effectiveness, the jury's still out on that. We're going to keep testing it, and I'll keep checking my numbers. And then we'll probably make a final decision maybe here in the next few months. Now, for anyone new to my channel, I didn't even mention the equipment I have, so let me share that with you really quick. Still running my Tunze9004 Skimmer. It's a nano skimmer. Does a great job, and it's pulling all kinds of gunk, especially since I've started using the Gyre. I don't know if that's some kind of side effect of the extra, surface agitation, or maybe it's just because it's more of a constant flow and not variable causing my sump to fluctuate. Either way, skimmer's doing this damn thing. I'm not complaining. And as far as my phosguard, I did make a change. I'm starting to try to do things a little more measured in my tank, I guess, if you want to say. So instead of just filling up my reactor and just running with it, I'm trying to stick more with the recommended amount of phosguard I should put in my tank. And when I started doing that, sad to say, I've been overdosing phosguard on my tank for close to a year. I'll show you guys the compartment and just show you just how much media is recommended for my tank. And it's halfway filling it up. So for anyone that's getting a tank like this, if you want to get a reactor based off the size of the media you're going to need for your tank, and not just based off the biggest reactor you can fit in your tank. So just a quick word of advice. And as far as other changes, I have started using the CHM carbon. So I'll keep you guys updated on that. Still too early to say what I think about it, but I have started using it on my tank. Now, for anyone following my channel, you guys are well aware I've been wanting to try a Gyre on my tank probably for the last 4 or 5 months. I finally pulled the trigger. I was able to sell my Mp10. I sold that Mp10 probably in 24 hours. Took that money, added a little with it, picked up this Gyre X130. So, definitely too early to review this. I like to use something for a while before I give you my full thoughts. But I will give you my first impressions, and we're going to give a quick look at it as well. Now, I will mention, I literally opened it out of the box, threw it on the tank. I didn't even touch anything as far as changing any propellers or, adjusting anything. I did purchase the end cap that allows me to cut the Gyre 130 in half if I, felt the need to do so. But honestly, not yet. I'm running this thing full go on my tank, and by full go, not 100% by any means, but the full length of the Gyre I'm using on my system. And definitely a different type of flow, something that, I figured would be different than the Mp10, but this thing moves a ton of water, man. I'm not going to lie to you. Totally different. It's not punching through, but it is moving, I would say the same, or if not more, than my Mp10 used to move in my system. Now, I was really interested in seeing the kind of flow I would get with, having a pump mounted towards the surface of my tank. So I opted not to mount this vertically on the back right wall, because honestly, that would just simulate the same flow pattern that the Mp10 was giving me. What's the point of buying a new pump if you're just going to do the same thing, right? So I'm not saying I'm never going to do that, because even with mounting this vertically on the back wall, being able to swivel the nozzles independently, I could literally have flow, going down the back wall and have flow coming around the front side of the glass at the same time. So, it's endless options, and that's not even, changing the propellers out, which gives me even more different variations as far as flow. So, definitely gonna take my time, and when I do release a review on this, I'm definitely gonna do a full demonstration on each type of flow and each different variation of propellers, with the end cap cutting it in half. If I do a review on this, I'm gonna make sure I do it right. So I'm gonna take my time, at least keep it long enough to have to do maintenance on it so I can cover that as well. So as far as first thoughts, definitely very impressed with this pump as far as water movement. When it comes to the build quality, I still feel like the Mp10 was more of a solid build. And when it comes to sound, hands down, This is way quieter, but you know, it's to be expected. It's not an external motor. But when I say it's quieter, I mean you can't even hear this thing. I literally run this close to, I would say, 40% on post mode right now. But I am going to give you guys a quick look. You know, I like to compare and contrast through videos. And luckily, I still got my old Mp10 footage. And we're going to take a look at the Gyre versus the Mp10. 100%, you know, who wins, who's going to push stuff around my tank. And I'll let you guys be the judge.
Fish. I thought it was a dead fish back there. He be all the way up on the left core on the back.
The ugly, the red one?
Yeah.
He's not ugly. Just call him stupid. He's red. The red pretty. He's red and black like a cardinal bird.
Well, the weird fish. Yeah.
He perches.
Huh?
He perches. He don't swim around. He just finds a spot and sets up.
I thought he was dead.
Yeah. So now you guys have been properly introduced to the Gyre 130, and we're going to compare and contrast the Mp10 to the Gyre in more detail, you know, in its own video. I feel it deserves that much, but I'm curious to see what you guys' first thoughts are, because comparing those two videos side by side, I would say the Mp10 and the Gyre, you know, they're pretty comparable as far as the amount of water moving, but the type of water flow is where they differ. But that should cover the Gyre, and I had to give you guys a behind the scenes, you know, a little audio of what happens when I'm recording my tank, you know, between the baby screaming and, you know, the wife talking about my fish or something going on. It's always something going on in the background. I figured I'd give you guys a peek. But let's go ahead and quit rambling. Let's go ahead and cover the updates as far as the fish, the livestock, and my coral changes, because there has been a few changes, some major changes, and I definitely have some plans to share with you guys. So let's go ahead and cover the corals first. You know, I know what you guys are thinking. You know, CJ, what the hell happened to your tank, man? You know, you're missing corals. You know, it's all open now. And, you know, let's talk about it. You know, first and foremost, let's talk about the leather coral. As you can tell, that huge finger leather I had in the middle of my tank is gone. And there's a few reasons for it. And in a nutshell, it had to do with the flow from the Gyre. I mentioned before in my flow video, either your flow is going to dictate your coral placement or your coral placement is going to dictate your flow. But when it comes to that Gyre, there's nothing dictating that thing's flow pattern. And that's what happened with my finger leather. You know, even on the lowest setting, with that Gyre mounted towards the surface, it was still moving so much water that my finger leather would literally lay over on this rockscape and on top of everything. So instead of standing upright like it used to, it just couldn't take it. And my tank's too small, and I couldn't have that coral just blanketing everything. So I ended up removing it, trading it for a different type of leather coral, and I replaced it with a green finger leather. So I ended up exchanging my larger leather coral for this smaller green one. Now I say smaller, but this thing isn't opened up fully, trust me. This thing has still got some decent size. And when it comes to size, I really don't care, honestly, because I've learned one thing: leather corals grow fast in my tank, and I fully expect this to, you know, be a pretty good size, probably in a matter of 5 or 6 months. But in the meantime, I get to enjoy it filling in my scape, and I also get to enjoy that splash of color that I didn't have in this part of my tank. So looking forward to it. Now, if I can get this thing to encrust on this rock, I'll be happy. You know, I've had failed attempts with super glue, had a failed attempt with tying it down with, you know, with fishing line. So now I'm just hoping that, you know, a little low flow and a little time and patience, it'll do its thing and attach to this rock like I want it to. So at this point, you know, I consider my tank going through a major transition. You know, with that one new addition, that completely changed the way the tank looks without that huge leather coral. So let's talk about the corals that are missing. And the two corals I'm referring to are going to be my lemon lime and my gold torch corals. Those are the same 2 corals that I ended up treating for the brown jelly. And when it comes to the treatment, honestly, I'm going to say it was very successful. Watched them for about 3 weeks after I treated them. Didn't lose any more heads. They were starting to respond and open up. And the more they opened up, the more those dead heads stuck out like a sore thumb. And the more it just kept aggravating me. That's one thing you'll notice about my tank. I'm very particular with my coral placement. And if you look close enough, you'll notice you can't see the stems or any heads on any of my Euphyllia corals. All you see is the actual tentacles or the polyps showing. So the plan's simple. I'm going to take the small amount of credit I got for those 2 corals and replace them with something nice. I have an idea what I want to do. The flow in my tank is totally different now because of the gyre. Low flow areas are now mid to high flow areas. And because of that, I have more options. That void area on the top left, I'm thinking about trying another anemone. I know what you guys are thinking, hey, it didn't work out the first time. But with different flow patterns, I may have more success. I found that the anemones were attracted to the flow on the back wall, but now I have flow across the front of my tank, and I think that it may work out. So I may try that, who knows? But I will say the flow on the bottom right of the tank, totally different. And even though that purple torch on the bottom right is moving, right above it, that gold torch really wasn't getting as much flow as it used to with the Mp10. So I'm thinking I may go more of a frog spine route or hammer route, something that doesn't need as much flow for the bottom right. So those are the immediate plans. Let me show you guys some of the corals that are having problems, just in case you guys are curious, because I'm still not out of the woods yet as far as issues with my tank. Give you guys a quick look at some coral warfare I noticed the other night. Unfortunately, the victim was my prize gynophora coral. I relocated them because of the gyre's flow being too strong. Failing to realize that this mystery coral that I still don't know the name of even had sweeper tentacles. I've never even seen it show sweepers before. Unfortunately, it was attached to my gynophora all night. Even though I tried to blast it and save the day, it still hasn't opened up today, so I think I may have lost it. It's going to be the second victim. He was also mounted close to that mystery coral. Now, I've since moved both this coral and my gynophora. Hopefully they both recover, but it is what it is. And this hobby lessons never stop, and I've learned not to put anything close to that green coral on top of this rock. These are those mushrooms that were getting completely bleached out, the orange Redactus mushrooms I had close to the top of my scape. So I'm hoping that, a medium flow, low light area on my sand bed is just what the doctor ordered for these guys. So I'll keep you guys updated on this situation. If they bounce back like I want them to, they're going to be some gorgeous pieces. That's pretty much going to cover the corals I really wanted to. Everything else is still doing well for the most part. My Duncan coral is still recovering from, the damage it took from the angelfish. And I'm still keeping a close eye out for any other signs of brown jelly. But so far, 2.5, 3 weeks removed from the incident, nothing showing issues. So, I'm hopefully optimistic that it doesn't resurface or show its ugly head again in my tank. Now, as far as the livestock goes in my tank, there has been a few changes, nothing really major. Of course, I did catch and return that midnight angel. I'll let someone else deal with him in their tank. But when it comes to additions, I did add a 6 Line Wrasse. So that's going to complete the wrasses in my tank. I have 3 of them, and they're getting along great, no issues. I did lose 2 chromis. I'm guessing to aggression. Those guys chase each other. Luckily, no other fish in the tank has really cared about them. It's just aggression between themselves. So, that's just what happens with chromis. I'll deal with it. I'll see how much they get along and if I can even keep them in my tank. But that did factor into some water quality issues I'm going to explain to you guys. So let me update you guys on my master plan that I had a few weeks ago and pretty much how it did not work out like I wanted. My plan was to remove the calc from auto top off, basically not dose anything to my tank and pretty much try to nail down how much my tank was consuming, meaning my alkalinity and calcium, how much would it drop between water changes. Now, of course, this was all going to depend on the nitrate level in my tank. Understanding that I just added some new fish, so the bioload did increase, which I expected, my nitrates to increase from that. But what I didn't count on was 2 of the chromis dying and me not being able to remove the carcasses. So that basically just broke down in my tank and just killed all my plans. My nitro levels skyrocketed over the next, I would say, 2.5 weeks. I was trying my best to be patient and wait for some kind of alkalinity drop or calcium drop to happen, and it never did. So my plan just completely backfired. I never found out how much my tank was using, and at the same time, I let my nitrates creep up to close to 20 parts per million, maybe a little more, which is way above anything I consider safe for my tank. My tank normally runs anywhere between 0 and 10 parts per million, closer to 0, usually for the most part once my tank's balanced out. So definitely, I think that along with that angelfish eating my corals, you know, the damage to them, the bad water quality, all of it kind of snowballed into the hell I'm dealing with at the moment. So I'm going to crawl my way out of it. No worries. You know, I got a solid plan. I think just consistent water changes of the next few days, which I've been doing starting 4 days ago. You know, I've been doing a 5-gallon water change every other day and just basically watching the numbers decrease. So I haven't had a chance to check my nitrates before this video, but I will try to and get a list of updated parameters for you guys. But I have no doubt, you know, once I get close to 50 to 60% of my actual tank's water volume changed out, that number is going to drop down, and I have no doubt I'll be able to get it balanced out. So the priority right now, keeping nitrates under control, and I'll just figure out what my tank's parameters are later as far as how much it's consuming. But I'm not dosing, so, you know, water changes. Worst case, my tank's just going to match the parameters of reef crystals out of the bucket, and that works for me. You know, my last check, my alkalinity was close to 10 or 11, and my calcium was still through the roof. It was still close to 500. So, you know, something's still wrong here, but I'll nail it down. You know, no consumption is usually a sign of no growth. So that's something I'll definitely have to figure out in my tank. So I think it's going to catch you guys up on everything that's happened over the last few weeks, at least anything of significance. And honestly, this video has just been a long 30-minute ramble, so I think it's a good time to stop here. I will say, I have not added any more shrimp to the tank yet. I'll make sure I share that with you guys because, you know, at this point, no point in adding anything else. I'm taking my water under control. Nitrates low, you know, everything balanced back out. And then I will start adding new corals and, you know, new shrimp and sharing the updates with you. But other than that, you know, year 2 for the reef tank sucks at the moment, but it's all good. You know, it could be worse. Everything could be dead. Everything could be melting, and I could just have to start over. So gonna stay positive, gonna keep it moving, and, you know, keep loving the hobby. So other than that, if you guys got any questions, you know what to do. As always, like, comment, subscribe. You guys do what y'all do. Y'all be easy.